Sound technician Jack Sullivan was winding cable on the ship's aft deck when he heard a strange sound, like a sob, but muffled, stifled. He stopped, listened. It came again. Sullivan looked around. No one was there. The sound was coming from the lifeboat. He approached, lifted the tarp, and froze. Marlon Brando was there, knees drawn up to his chest, arms wrapped around his legs, head between his knees. He was rocking back and forth in a rhythmic motion. And he was whispering, repeating the same words over and over. Bly is wrong. Bly is wrong. Bly is wrong. Sullivan stepped back, breathless. Mr. Milestone! Mr. Milestone! I found him! The director came running, the crew behind him. Milestone looked at the lifeboat, and his face changed. A mixture of shock, fear, helplessness. Because this wasn't just an actor's crisis, this was a breakdown. Brando was gone, lost inside the character, and no one knew how to bring him back. If you're curious about Hollywood's darkest moments and the dangerous limits of method acting, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Lewis Milestone stood behind the camera, anxious but patient. It was the 17th take, and Brando was giving a different performance each time. Sometimes Fletcher Christian was angry, sometimes fragile, sometimes silent. Milestone was used to it. That was Brando, unpredictable, but magnificent. But this take felt different. Brando stopped mid-line. His mouth was open, but no words came out. His eyes were unfocused, as if he were seeing something far away. Trevor Howard, playing Captain Bly, waited opposite him anxiously. "Marlon," Howard said, "are you going to continue?" Brando looked at him but seemed not to recognize him. His expression changed. Panic, then fear, then helplessness. His lips trembled, and he whispered a single word. "No." Then he turned and started running. Milestone watched in shock. "Cut! Marlon, where are you going?" But Brando didn't hear him. He passed through the set, slipped between the technicians, and went out on deck. The crew froze, no one knowing what to do. The assistant director started running. "Stop him!" But Brando was too fast, his powerful body moving in panic. He ran toward the back of the ship and disappeared from view. Milestone yelled into the microphone, "Everyone find Marlon, now!" The crew scattered. They ran to the cabins, the deck, the engine room. But Brando was nowhere to be found. And as the hours passed, the panic grew. Because the HMS Bounty replica ship was anchored off the coast of Tahiti in the open sea. If Brando had jumped into the sea, no one wanted to think about it. But what was truly terrifying were the 2 weeks before Brando's escape. Because the signs had always been there, only no one had seen them. 2 weeks earlier, Brando had started arriving late on set. First 10 minutes, then half an hour, then 2 hours. Milestone tried to remain patient. This was Brando. The studio had wanted him. He was being paid $125 million, but the delays were wrecking the production. MGM executives yelled on the phone every day, "Milestone, control this kid." But Milestone couldn't control him, because Brando wasn't Brando anymore. He was Fletcher Christian. And Fletcher Christian was uncontrollable. Brando wouldn't take off his costume. Even after filming was over, he remained in those 18th century clothes. He spoke like Fletcher in his hotel room, behaved like Fletcher at meals. The crew interpreted this as method acting. Brando was immersed in his character. But a technician noticed that Brando was no longer responding to his own name. When they asked, "Marlon, would you like some water?" he would look up in surprise. "Marlon who?" he would whisper. One morning, the costume designer entered Brando's cabin and witnessed a strange scene. Brando was standing in front of the mirror, looking at his own face, whispering, "Who are you? I don't recognize you." The designer became concerned. "Marlon, are you okay?" Brando turned to him, a momentary look of bewilderment in his eyes. Marlon. Yes, I'm Marlon. Right. But sometimes I'm not sure. The designer reported it to Milestone, but the director was too busy. Production was falling apart, the budget had tripled, and the studio was threatening them daily. Brando's psychological state was not a priority, but it should have been. Because Brando wasn't just immersing himself in the character, he was disappearing into it, forgetting his own identity. When Sullivan called Milestone, the director came running, his heart pounding in his chest. The search had lasted 3 hours. The Tahitian coast had been combed, fishing boats alerted, even the local police notified. And now, amid all this chaos, Brando had been found in the ship's lifeboat, crouched, curled up, collapsed. When Milestone lifted the tarp and looked inside, the sight shocked him. Brando was in the fetal position, his knees pulled up to his chest, his arms tightly wrapped around his legs, his head buried between his knees. He was rocking, rhythmically, as if trying to comfort himself. His eyes were open but not looking, his gaze lost in space. And he was whispering constantly. Bly is wrong. The mutiny is right. Bly is wrong. The mutiny is right. Milestone climbed into the dinghy and approached slowly. Marlon, he said, his voice soft and soothing. Marlon, can you talk to me? Brando trembled and lifted his head. His face was wet, with tears and sweat. His eyes saw Milestone but didn't recognize him. Who are you? He whispered. I'm not the captain. Are you the captain? Milestone's heart sank. No, Marlon, I'm not the captain. I'm Lewis. I'm the director. Do you remember me? Brando's eyes narrowed, trying to think. Lewis. Director. Yes, I know those words. But they don't belong on this ship. There is only the captain on this ship. And his voice broke. I cannot obey him, because he is wrong, and I am right. But I am also wrong, because I am rebelling, and rebellion is treason. But treason is right. But right is wrong. But his sentences became jumbled, his logic unraveling. Brando's mind was in a loop, trapped in Fletcher Christian's moral dilemma, unable to escape. The director turned to the crew. Call the doctor. Right away. And notify the studio. Shooting is suspended. The assistant director looked on in shock. For how long? Milestone looked at Brando, that broken, lost man. I don't know. Maybe days. Maybe weeks. But right now, this man cannot be on set. The crew dispersed silently. Trevor Howard, playing Captain Bly, stood on the sidelines, watching, a deep worry on his face. Howard had been shooting scenes with Brando for weeks and had noticed something. That emptiness in Brando's eyes, that lostness. But Howard had remained silent too. Because in Hollywood, you don't ask questions about star actors. You turn a blind eye to their genius, tolerate their odd behavior, and keep working. But now, the price of that silence was clear. Brando had collapsed, and no one was prepared to save him. When the doctor arrived, his name was Dr. Raymond Shaw, MGM's set psychiatrist. Brando was still in the lifeboat, but he was no longer rocking it. He was just sitting there, his gaze distant, his hands trembling. Shaw climbed into the boat and sat down next to Brando. Marlon, I'm Dr. Shaw. Can I talk to you? Brando looked at him, this time with a hint of recognition. Doctor? Yes, doctors are real, not characters. I can talk to you. His voice was hoarse, tired. Shaw took out his notebook. Can you tell me what happened? Brando took a deep breath, searching for words. I was playing Fletcher Christian, but then Fletcher started playing me. He got inside me, and now he won't come out. He's in my thoughts, my feelings, my memories. I'm forgetting Marlon's memories. Instead, I remember Fletcher's memories, Tahiti, the Mutiny, Bly, the ship. But these aren't real. Are they? Or are they real? The psychiatrist spoke privately with Milestone. Mr. Milestone, Marlon is experiencing a serious psychological crisis. His connection to the character has become pathological. He's losing his own identity, replacing it with that of Fletcher Christian. This isn't just method acting, it's dissociation. The mind splitting to protect itself. If you continue filming, there's a risk of permanent damage. Milestone buried his head in his hands. How long will it take? Shaw hesitated. At least a week, maybe more. We need to hospitalize him, keep him under observation, start him on anti-anxiety medication. Numbers flashed through Milestone's mind. A week's delay, a loss of $50,000 a day, the studio's fury, the insurance company's investigation. But Brando's health was more important. "Okay," said Milestone. "Take him to the hospital. I'll talk to the studio." But Brando refused to go to the hospital. "No," he said, his voice firm, resolute. "I'm not going to the hospital. Because hospitals are real, and I can't handle reality. I'm only safe when I'm a character. But the character is killing me. It's a paradox, and I can't escape the paradox." Shaw tried another approach. "Marlon, if you rest, if you step away from the character, you can be yourself again." Brando laughed bitterly. Be yourself. What a strange concept. I've been living as other people for years. Stanley Kowalski, Terry Malloy, Vito Corleone, Fletcher Christian. I've forgotten who I am. Maybe I never existed. Maybe I'm just a collection of characters. Milestone tried to talk to him. Shaw suggested treatment. MGM executives pressured him. But Brando didn't come out of the cabin. He ate there, slept there, lived there with the memories of Fletcher Christian. The crew watched him from a distance, anxiously. Sometimes Brando talked to himself. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he just sat there, looking at the ocean. On the third day, Milestone climbed into the lifeboat and sat down next to Brando. "Marlon, I want to make a deal with you." Brando looked at him, a hint of interest in his eyes. "What deal?" Milestone chose his words carefully. "If you come back, if you finish the shoot, I promise you, I will never let you take the method this far again. I will protect you. I'll protect you from the character." Brando was silent for a long time. Then he whispered, "But what if I abandon Fletcher? What will happen to him? He lives inside me. Do I have to kill him?" Milestone put his hand on Brando's shoulder. "Fletcher is a character, Marlon. He's not real. But you are real, and you must survive." Brando's eyes filled with tears. "But surviving is so exhausting, Lewis. Being a character is easier, because characters don't feel pain. They just play." Milestone shook his head. "I know, Marlon. I know. But you have to feel pain, because that's what makes you human." On the morning of the fourth day, Brando stepped out of the trailer. Slowly, hesitantly, as if stepping into a new world. The crew applauded him, but Brando didn't smile. He just looked at Milestone and whispered, "Fletcher is still here. But now he's quieter. Maybe he'll leave me in the end. Or I'll leave him. I don't know yet." Filming resumed, but everything had changed. Brando no longer played Fletcher Christian the same way. He was more distant, more controlled, as if he had built a wall between himself and the character. His performance was still powerful, but it was no longer dangerous. Because Brando had learned, some boundaries should not be crossed, and losing himself in the character was one of those boundaries. Mutiny on the Bounty was released in November 1962, and critics were harsh. Over-budgeted, meandering, unfocused, wrote the New York Times, Variety magazine. Brando's performance is powerful but inconsistent, sometimes magnificent, sometimes lost. The public wasn't impressed either. The film was a box office disappointment. It cost $20 million, but only made $13 million. MGM suffered huge losses, and Brando was blamed. The media labeled him uncontrollable, unprofessional, a production killer. But no one knew the truth. Brando wasn't just out of control, he was lost. And the cost of that loss was more than just money. Years later, in the 1970s, Brando would recount his mutiny on the Bounty experience in an interview. "I almost didn't finish that film, because playing Fletcher Christian, it almost killed me. I took the method too far. I wasn't just playing the character, I was living him. And while living him, I lost myself. I found myself in a lifeboat, crying, unable to remember my own name. That's when I realized, method acting is a tool. But if you don't use it carefully, it can also be a weapon. A weapon used against yourself." The interviewer asked, "Do you regret it?" Brando paused, thought, "I don't regret it, because that experience taught me something, my limits. And knowing your limits is necessary to survive." Because MGM hid that story, kept it from the media, censored the production reports, only those who were there knew. The crew, Milestone, Shaw, and they remained silent. Silent for years. But the story still leaked out, spread in whispers, became part of Hollywood lore. And now, those whispers reveal the truth. Marlon Brando had disappeared one day, lost within the character, and nearly couldn't return. That day revealed the darkest side of method acting, how acting could become a genius, but also a disaster.